Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Independence and looked at the message that had just arrived through the quantum relay system. The blue hologram flickered in front of him, showing official symbols from the Galactic Council. He read the words slowly and felt his stomach drop. The Council was calling for an emergency meeting on Nexus Prime, and they wanted Earth to send representatives immediately. Commander Lisa Hayes walked over to him with her tablet in hand. She had been monitoring the galactic news feeds for the past few weeks, and the reports were not good. The tone from other species had changed from polite tolerance to something much colder. The Zephyrian Empire had been broadcasting messages across the galaxy calling humans dangerous primitives who threatened the peace that had lasted for thousands of years. "Captain, we have more intelligence coming in from our listening posts," Lisa said as she handed him her tablet. "The council members have been meeting in private sessions for months now. Our sources say they are discussing what they call the human problem." Jake scrolled through the reports and shook his head. Humanity had been part of the galactic community for 57 years now. They had followed all the rules and signed all the treaties. They had shared their technology and helped other species with problems that had puzzled them for centuries. But instead of gratitude, they were getting suspicion and fear. Dr. Peter Chen came on to the bridge carrying a stack of data pads. As the ship's expert on alien cultures, he had been studying the political situation for weeks. His face showed the worrying that they all felt. "The founding species of the council are nervous about us," he said as he set down his materials. "We solve problems too fast for their liking. We adapt to new situations in ways they cannot understand. Where they follow procedures that are thousands of years old, we make up new solutions on the spot." The three officers gathered around the main display as Peter brought up a map of the galaxy. Red dots marked the locations where human ships had been active in recent months. Mining operations in asteroid fields, exploration missions to uncharted systems, and trade routes that connected dozens of worlds. To human eyes, it looked like progress and growth. To the alien species of the Council, it probably looked like expansion and conquest. "They are scared of how fast we learn and change," Peter continued. "Most species in the galaxy develop technology very slowly. They might take centuries to improve their ships or weapons. We have been upgrading our equipment every few years. They see this as a threat to the stability they have worked so hard to maintain." Lisa pulled up another screen showing intercepted communications between council worlds. The messages were coded, but their translation software had broken most of the encryption. The words they found were troubling. Dangerous, unpredictable, violent, and uncontrolled appeared over and over again when other species discussed humanity. Ambassador Corinne Blake entered the bridge at that moment. She had been Earth's representative to the Council for 10 years and knew the political situation better than anyone. Her usual calm expression was replaced with something much more serious. "I just received a personal message from one of our allies in the Council," she said. "This emergency meeting is not what it appears to be. They plan to formally accuse humanity of violating the peace accords and threatening galactic security." Jake felt his hands clench into fists. "What are the charges?" "They claim we have been weaponizing civilian technology and building military forces beyond what is needed for defense," Corinne replied. "They point to our asteroid mining equipment and say it could be used to destroy planets. They complain about our exploration ships carrying weapons and shields that are too powerful. Most importantly, they say we solve conflicts with violence instead of diplomacy." The bridge fell silent as everyone considered what this meant. If the Council voted to censure humanity, they could be confined to their home system. All trade agreements would be cancelled. All technology sharing would stop. Earth would become a prison surrounded by the vast emptiness of space. But Jake knew something that the Council did not. Humanity had not been idle during their decades in space. While they explored and traded and made friends with other species, they had also been learning and preparing. The human military was much stronger than anyone realized. Their technology was more advanced than they had revealed, and most importantly, they had discovered things about the galaxy that would shock the Council to its core. Set course for Nexus Prime, Jake ordered. We will attend their meeting and hear their accusations, but we will also be ready to defend ourselves and show them exactly what humanity is capable of when pushed too far. The Independence began its journey through hyperspace toward the Council's home world. In the cargo bays below, sealed containers held equipment that could change the balance of power in the galaxy. Corinne Blake prepared her diplomatic responses, while Lisa Hayes checked the ship's weapon systems. Dr. Chen gathered intelligence files that contained secrets the Council had hidden for millennia. None of them knew that their arrival at Nexus Prime would mark the beginning of a war that would reshape the galaxy forever. The Council expected to judge humanity and find them wanting. Instead, they were about to discover that some species were much more dangerous when cornered than they ever were when free. The Council chamber on Nexus Prime was the largest building Ambassador Corinne Blake had ever seen. The circular room stretched up so high that the ceiling disappeared into darkness above them. Hundreds of different alien species sat in rows that went up the walls like a giant amphitheater. Each species had their own section with special seats designed for their unique body shapes. The ear hummed with translation devices that converted speech into forms that every species could understand. Corinne stood alone in the center of the chamber on a small platform surrounded by empty space. Above her, the 12 founding species of the Council sat in special elevated boxes that showed their importance. Their seats were made of rare metals and decorated with symbols of power that had been respected throughout the galaxy for thousands of years. High Magistrate Veltar of the Zephyrian Empire rose from his crystalline throne. His body was tall and thin with skin that looked like living glass. When he spoke, his voice carried clearly through the translation system to every corner of the massive room. We gathered today to address a threat to the peace and stability that has blessed our galaxy for over 3,000 years, he announced. The species known as humanity stands accused of serious violations of the Accords of Peaceful Development. Corinne kept her face calm and neutral as she listened to the formal charges being read. She had expected this, but hearing the accusations spoken aloud in front of hundreds of species still felt like a physical blow. Around the chamber, alien representatives leaned forward in their seats to get a better view of the proceedings. The first charge, Veltar continued, is the unauthorized militarization of civilian technology. Human asteroid mining equipment has been modified with weapon systems far beyond what is needed for basic operations. These modifications allow the equipment to be used as planet-destroying weapons with minimal changes to their basic design. The accusation brought murmurs from the gallery above. Many species had been worried about human mining techniques for years. The humans used controlled explosions and energy beams that could carve through solid rock like it was soft clay. In the wrong hands, such tools could indeed threaten entire worlds. Supreme Chancellor Crixinal of the Hegemony stood up next. His species looked like walking trees with bark-like skin and branches instead of arms. The second charge is the construction of military forces that exceed all reasonable defensive needs, he said in a voice that sounded like wind through leaves. Human exploration vessels carry shield generators and weapon systems that rival our own military starships. No peaceful species requires such destructive capability for simple exploration missions. Corinne had to admit that this charge was partly true. Human ships were indeed heavily armed and protected compared to vessels from other species. But the galaxy was a dangerous place with pirates, hostile alien creatures, and natural hazards that could destroy unprepared explorers. Humans preferred to be ready for trouble rather than call for help and wait for rescue that might never come. The third and most serious charge, announced Counselor Zexhai of the Collective, is a pattern of solving disputes through violence rather than diplomatic negotiation. The recent incident at Proxima is a perfect example of this dangerous behavior. The Proxima incident had happened 3 months earlier when a human patrol found pirates attacking a civilian transport. Instead of calling for council peacekeepers, and waiting for them to arrive, the human ships had immediately attacked the pirates and destroyed their entire fleet. The transport and its passengers were saved, but the pirates were all killed in the fighting. Council peacekeepers would have negotiated with the pirates and found a peaceful solution, Zexhai continued. Instead, humans chose immediate violence. That resulted in the deaths of 37 beings. This shows a fundamental inability to embrace the principles of peaceful coexistence that form the foundation of our galactic civilization. Karen listened to each accusation carefully and made mental notes about how to respond. The charges were serious, but they were also based on misunderstandings about human nature and motivations. The council species had lived in peace for so long that they had forgotten what it meant to face real threats and make hard choices under pressure. When the formal charges were finished, Karen was given the opportunity to respond. She looked up at the hundreds of alien faces staring down at her and felt the weight of humanity's future resting on her shoulders. "Your Honors," she said in a clear voice that carried throughout the chamber, "I request 3 standard days to prepare humanity's complete response to these charges." The request caused surprised chatter among the council members. Most species would have immediately denied the accusations or offered weak excuses for their behavior. Instead, Karen was asking for time to mount a proper defense. This suggested that humanity had more to say than anyone expected. High Magistrate Veltar conferred quietly with the other founding species before responding. "The request is granted," he announced. "This session will reconvene in 3 standard days to hear humanity's defense. Until that time, the accused delegation will remain on Nexus Prime under council supervision." As the session ended and the various species began filing out of the chamber, Karen received an encrypted message on her personal communicator. The message was short, but it changed everything about the situation. It came directly from Earth and contained only a few words that made her smile for the first time in days. "Package deployed. Phoenix Protocol is active. Give them hell, Karen." She deleted the message immediately and walked calmly from the chamber with Captain Morrison and the rest of the human delegation following behind her. The council members probably expected her to spend the next 3 days preparing desperate excuses and pleading for mercy. Instead, she would be preparing to reveal secrets that would shake the foundation of galactic civilization. The real trial was about to begin, and humanity would not be the one standing accused when it was over. The council had made one critical mistake in their calculations. They assumed that humans were just another species that would submit to their authority when threatened with punishment. They had never dealt with a species that preferred to fight rather than surrender. In 3 days, they would learn exactly what that meant. 3 days later, Ambassador Karen Blake returned to the council chamber, but she was not alone this time. Captain Jake Morrison walked beside her along with Commander Lisa Hayes and Dr. Peter Chen. The sight of military officers in the diplomatic chamber caused whispers of surprise among the hundreds of species watching from the gallery above. Karen took her position on the central platform and looked up at High Magistrate Veltar in his crystalline throne. Instead of beginning with a formal defense of the charges against humanity, she asked a simple question that caught everyone off guard. "Your Honor, I would like to know how many wars the Zephyrian Empire has fought in the last 1,000 years. The question clearly annoyed Veltar, who shifted in his seat before responding. "The Zephyrian people are peaceful by nature," he said with barely controlled irritation. "We have not engaged in warfare for over 2,000 years. Such violence is beneath civilized species." Karen nodded politely and turned to address Supreme Chancellor Crixinal of the Hegemony. "And how many wars has your species fought in the same time period?" "None," came the reply in a voice that sounded like creaking wood. "The Hegemony has maintained perfect peace for 3 millennia under the guidance of the Council's wisdom." Karen continued asking the same question of each founding species in turn. The answers were all similar, with claims of long periods of peace and prosperity. Some species boasted that they had not seen warfare for 5,000 years or more. The gallery began to murmur as alien representatives wondered where these questions were leading. When Karen finished her survey, she activated a holographic display that filled the center of the chamber with swirling lights and data streams. I would like to present a timeline of galactic history based on research conducted by human scientists over the past 20 years, she announced. The hologram showed the galaxy as it appeared thousands of years ago, with different colors representing the territories of various species. As time moved forward on the display, some civilizations grew larger while others remained the same size. But Karen focused on something else entirely. Every few centuries, entire civilizations simply vanished from the map without explanation. According to official council records, Karen said as she pointed to the disappearing civilizations, these species were classified as exploration casualties or failed colonies. Their disappearance was attributed to natural disasters, internal conflicts, or simply poor planning. But human researchers have spent years investigating the ruins of these lost civilizations, and we discovered something very interesting. Dr. Steve Gordon appeared as a hologram transmitted from his research station in deep space. He was humanity's chief expert on ancient alien cultures, and his face showed the excitement of someone who had made an incredible discovery. Over the past 5 years, my team has excavated sites from 17 different vanished civilizations, he said. What we found challenges everything we thought we knew about galactic history. The display changed to show images of ruined cities on dead worlds. Broken buildings stretched across barren landscapes under alien skies. But the destruction was not random or natural. It showed clear signs of deliberate attack by advanced weapons that had turned thriving worlds into lifeless graveyards. Each of these civilizations shared common characteristics, Dr. Gordon continued. They all showed rapid technological advancement in the centuries before their disappearance. They all developed military technologies that exceeded council standards for defensive purposes. Most importantly, they all showed a tendency toward independent action rather than strict compliance with council directives. The chamber began to fill with nervous energy as species representatives realized what the human researchers were suggesting. The pattern was clear to ignore. Every civilization that had acted too independently or advanced too quickly had mysteriously vanished from galactic history. Karen took control of the presentation again and brought up quantum analysis data. From the ruined worlds, our scientists used advanced detection equipment to analyze the quantum signatures left behind by whoever destroyed these civilizations, she said. The energy patterns are consistent across all 17 sites despite being separated by thousands of years and vast distances. Commander Hayes stepped forward and began transmitting new data to every screen in the chamber. We also intercepted communications from the galactic network's most secure channels, she announced. What we discovered suggests that the peaceful galactic community is built on a foundation of lies and hidden violence. The intercepted messages appeared on screens throughout the chamber in dozens of different alien languages. Most representatives could not read them all, but the translation systems quickly provided summaries. The messages spoke of containment protocols, elimination procedures, and something called Watcher oversight that made no sense to most species. The founding species of this council are not the peaceful leaders they claim to be, Karen said as she looked directly at Veltar and the other elevated council members. They are enforcers for something much older and more dangerous than any of us realized. The chamber erupted in chaos as hundreds of species began talking at once. Some demanded explanations while others called for the humans to be arrested for spreading lies and propaganda. But Karen was not finished with her revelations. We know about the energy harvesting, she continued in a voice that somehow carried over the noise. We know about the psychic feeding networks that have been hidden throughout the galaxy for millennia. Most importantly, we know about the Watchers. The mention of that name brought instant silence to the chamber. Every member of the founding species went completely still in a way that looked more like terror than surprise. Even species that had seemed confused by the earlier revelations now showed signs of recognition and fear. Captain Morrison activated emergency protocols on his personal communicator, and within seconds, quantum beacons throughout the galaxy began broadcasting a simple message on every frequency. The Watchers are real, the Council serves them. Humanity stands ready to fight. Who stands with us? The response came faster than anyone expected as communication systems throughout the chamber began receiving replies from across the galaxy. Hundreds of worlds that had been quietly suffering under Council restrictions suddenly found their voice and their courage. The trial of humanity was over, but the real war was just beginning. The word Watchers hit the Council chamber like a physical blow that sent shock waves through every species present. Ambassador Karen Blake watched as representatives from dozens of different worlds suddenly showed signs of fear that their translation devices could not hide. The founding species of the Council looked like they had seen death itself walk into their sacred chamber. High Magistrate Veltar tried to restore order, but his crystalline voice cracked with something that sounded almost like panic. These accusations are baseless lies designed to create chaos and undermine the peace we have worked so hard to maintain, he declared. But his words lacked the confidence he had shown just minutes earlier. Commander Lisa Hayes stepped forward and began transmitting data directly to every screen and communication device in the chamber. The information came from humanity's deep space monitoring stations that had been secretly placed throughout the galaxy over the past 20 years. Most species did not even know these stations existed, but they had been recording and analyzing everything that happened in supposedly empty space. The data we are sharing comes from quantum archaeology sites, intercepted communications, and energy pattern analysis, Lisa announced. What we discovered explains why certain civilizations vanish while others are allowed to survive and prosper under Council guidance. The screens throughout the chamber began displaying information that made even the calmest species representatives shift nervously in their seats. Energy readings from dead star systems showed massive drains that had no natural explanation. Communication intercepts revealed coded messages between Council worlds that spoke of feeding schedules and harvest quotas. Most disturbing of all were the quantum signatures that matched patterns found at every site where an advanced civilization had mysteriously disappeared. Dr. Peter Chen took control of the presentation and brought up a three-dimensional map of the galaxy. The Galactic Council is not what it appears to be, he said in a voice that carried clearly through the translation systems. Behind the facade of peaceful cooperation lies an ancient conspiracy that spans millions of years. The map began highlighting star systems in different colors based on their energy output and psychic activity levels. A clear pattern emerged showing how certain worlds produced mental energy that was somehow being harvested and transported to unknown destinations. The founding species worlds showed the highest levels of this strange energy production. The real power in this galaxy belongs to entities so old that most species have forgotten they exist, Peter continued. The Council calls them Watchers, but they are actually parasites that feed on the mental energy produced by intelligent life. They require specific conditions to maintain their food supply, including peace, stability, and most importantly, technological stagnation. Captain Jake Morrison stepped forward. As alarms began sounding throughout the station, humanity discovered the Watchers by accident when our expansion into space triggered monitoring systems left behind by previous victims, he said. The quantum signatures were impossible to miss once we knew what to look for. The chamber fell silent as the full implications of the revelation began to sink in. Civilizations that advanced too quickly or showed too much independence were eliminated not by natural disasters or internal conflicts, but by ancient beings that saw them as threats to a carefully maintained ecosystem of mental energy harvesting. Every vanished civilization left behind clues, technology, and warnings, Morrison continued. For decades, human exploration teams have been gathering these breadcrumbs and following a trail that leads to an inescapable conclusion. The Watchers are not invincible and they are not gods. They are parasites that can be fought and defeated. As he spoke, quantum beacons throughout the galaxy began activating in a coordinated sequence that had been planned for years. The signals carry detailed information about the Watcher conspiracy along with technical specifications for weapons and defenses that previous civilizations had developed before their destruction. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Within minutes, communication systems throughout the chamber were receiving reports of rebellions erupting on over 200 worlds. Species that had been quietly suffering under council restrictions suddenly found the courage to act on anger that had been building for generations. Some representatives in the chamber declared their immediate support for the human revelation, while others remained loyal to the established order. But the careful balance of power that had maintained galactic peace for millennia was crumbling with each passing moment. The lights in the chamber suddenly dimmed as an oppressive presence filled the air that made every sentient being feel like prey being watched by invisible predators. Reality itself seemed to bend and twist as ancient entities that had remained hidden for centuries finally decided to reveal themselves. The Watchers spoke without using words or sounds. Their thoughts pressed directly into the minds of every creature in the chamber with a force that would have crushed most species instantly. The message they delivered was simple and terrifying in its absolute certainty: submit or face extinction. Most alien representatives immediately fell to their knees as their mental defenses crumbled before the psychic assault. Even some of the founding species showed signs of strain as they struggled to maintain their composure under the overwhelming mental pressure, but the humans remained standing. Ambassador Blake looked directly at the writhing shadows where the Watchers had chosen to manifest their presence and spoke words that every species in the chamber would remember for the rest of their lives. "We have been expecting you," she said with a calm smile that showed no fear at all. The psychic attack that followed was designed to destroy the minds of every human in the chamber. Mental energy that could have flattened mountains struck their consciousness with the force of a collapsing star. But human neural patterns, evolved in the chaotic and dangerous environment of Earth, proved remarkably resistant to mental manipulation and control, while other species writhed in agony or lost consciousness entirely. The human delegation stood firm against an assault that should have reduced them to mindless shells. Commander Hayes activated the final phase of humanity's plan as quantum disruption devices hidden throughout the galaxy began broadcasting interference patterns specifically designed to block psychic frequencies. For the first time in millions of years, the ancient Watchers experienced something they had completely forgotten. They felt pain. The scream that erupted from the Watchers when the quantum disruption field hit them was not a sound that any living being was meant to hear. It bypassed the ears entirely and struck directly at the consciousness of every creature in the chamber. Most alien species collapsed immediately as their minds tried to process agony on a scale that defied comprehension. But for the humans, the psychic scream was like music. Captain Jake Morrison felt a savage satisfaction as he watched the ancient parasites writhe in the shadows where they had chosen to manifest. For millions of years, these creatures had fed on the mental energy of countless civilizations while hiding behind the pretense of galactic peace and order. Now they were finally experiencing the consequences of their crimes. Commander Lisa Hayes coordinated with human fleets throughout the galaxy as the rebellion spread faster than anyone had thought possible. Her communication equipment showed reports streaming in from hundreds of worlds where species were throwing off council control and declaring their independence. The careful system of mental suppression that had kept the galaxy docile for millennia was collapsing in a matter of hours. Rebellion confirmed on Altair 7, she announced as new reports arrived. The mining colonies have seized control of their orbital platforms and are demanding immediate withdrawal of council oversight teams. Kepler Station reports successful capture of the administrative complex. Came another update. Local defense forces have joined the uprising and are requesting technical specifications for quantum disruption equipment. Ambassador Corinne Blake moved through the chaos in the chamber as alien representatives either fled in terror or tried to establish communication with their home worlds. The founding species of the Council were struggling to maintain their composure as the Watchers' psychic influence weakened. For the first time in their recorded history, these ancient puppet governments were being forced to think and act independently. High Magistrate Veltar stumbled from his crystalline throne as his species' connection to their Watcher overlords was severed by the disruption field. His glass-like skin flickered with colors that showed confusion and fear. "What have you done?" he demanded in a voice that cracked with genuine emotion instead of the cold authority he had displayed for decades. "We have given you back your freedom," Karen replied calmly. "Your species served the Watchers for so long that you forgot what it felt like to make your own decisions and control your own destiny." The revelation hit the chamber like another psychic shock wave as representatives began to understand the full scope of the conspiracy. The founding species had not been willing partners in the Watcher system. They had been the first victims, enslaved so completely that they believed they were acting according to their own will and judgment. Dr. Peter Chen brought up new displays showing the extent of the galactic uprising. Red markers appeared on star maps as world after world declared independence from Council control. Some conflicts were already turning violent as Council loyalists tried to suppress rebellions with military force. "The hegemony fleet is moving to blockade the Vega system," he reported. "But our intelligence suggests that half their ships have joined the rebellion and are refusing orders from the Central Command. Zephyrian forces are experiencing similar problems," added Lisa as she monitored communications from across the galaxy. "Their crews are demanding explanations about the Watcher conspiracy and many are abandoning their posts to return home and protect their families." The Watchers attempted another psychic assault, but the quantum disruption field held firm against their attacks. Captain Morrison felt a grim satisfaction as he watched the ancient beings struggle with technologies they did not understand. Previous civilizations had fought alone and been picked off one by one when they became too dangerous to ignore. But humanity had learned from their mistakes and prepared for this moment with decades of careful planning. Supreme Chancellor Crixinal of the hegemony approached the human delegation with movements that seemed uncertain and confused. His tree-like appearance was unchanged, but something fundamental had shifted in his manner and bearing. "The voices in our minds have gone silent," he said in wonder. "For the first time in living memory, we hear only our own thoughts. The Watchers controlled your species through constant mental influence," Peter explained. "You thought you were making independent decisions, but you were actually following suggestions planted directly in your consciousness. The disruption field has severed that connection and restored your natural mental processes." The chamber erupted in new chaos as more species representatives realized what had been done to them. Anger replaced fear as civilizations that had been secretly enslaved for generations finally understood the true nature of their situation. The careful order that had maintained galactic peace was not just crumbling, it was being torn apart by the fury of billions of awakened minds. Reports continued flowing in from across the galaxy as the uprising gained momentum. Species that had been content with stagnation for thousands of years suddenly remembered their warrior heritage and their desire for freedom and growth. Technologies that had been suppressed or forbidden began emerging from hidden vaults as civilizations prepared to defend their newly reclaimed independence. But the Watchers had contingency plans that spanned millions of years, and they were far from defeated. As their psychic control weakened, they began activating backup systems and weapons that had been hidden throughout the galaxy since before most current civilizations had even evolved. Automated defense platforms came online in Dead Star systems and began launching attacks against worlds that had joined the rebellion. Ancient weapons that could sterilize entire planets activated and prepared to eliminate any species that threatened the established order. The Watchers might have lost their ability to control minds directly, but they still had the power to destroy civilizations that refused to submit. Captain, Lisa reported as new warnings appeared on her screens. "We are detecting massive energy buildups in 17 different systems. Whatever the Watchers are activating, it has enough power to crack planets." Morrison felt his jaw clench as he realized that the war was far from over. The first battle had been won, but the Watchers had weapons that made their psychic abilities seem gentle by comparison. Humanity had given the galaxy its freedom, but now they all had to fight to keep it. Signal all human fleets, he ordered. Begin Phoenix Protocol implementation immediately. It is time to show these ancient parasites what happens when they threaten species that refuse to surrender. The war that followed lasted 18 months and reshaped the galaxy in ways that no one could have predicted. The Watchers unleashed weapons that had been hidden since the dawn of galactic civilization, turning entire star systems into graveyards of broken worlds and shattered moons. But for every system they destroyed, 10 more joined the rebellion with a fury that had been building for millions of years. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the U's Liberation as the combined rebel fleet approached the Nexus system for the final battle. Ships from hundreds of different species flew in formation around the human vessels, their hulls marked with symbols of freedom that had been carved by species that had never known they were slaves until humanity showed them the truth. The Watchers had retreated to their primary feeding station in the heart of the Nexus system, a massive structure that had been built around the system's star itself. For over 1 million years, it had collected and processed the mental energy harvested from civilizations across the galaxy. Now it would either be destroyed or it would become the tomb of every species that had dared to challenge the ancient order. All ships report ready for final assault, announced Commander Lisa Hayes from her position at the tactical station. Fleet strength is holding steady at just over 3,000 vessels from 47 different species. Morrison nodded as he studied the tactical display showing the Watcher defenses. Ancient battle stations protected the feeding apparatus with weapons that could destroy fleets with single shots. But the Rebel Alliance had advantages that previous civilizations had never possessed. They had detailed intelligence about Watcher technology gathered from dozens of archaeological sites. Most importantly, they had something that parasites could never understand or defeat. They had hope. Dr. Peter Chen worked at his science station analyzing the quantum structure of the Watcher feeding apparatus. His xenobiological research had revealed the crucial weakness that would make victory possible. The parasites are not truly immortal, he announced to the bridge crew. They are ancient and incredibly powerful, but they are ultimately finite beings with limitations that can be exploited. The revelation had come from studying the psychic matrix that the Watchers used to process mental energy. Every civilization they had consumed over the millions of years had left traces within their consciousness. Those traces retained memory, personality, and most importantly, they retained the anger and hatred of species that had been destroyed by the creatures they now existed within. Ambassador Karen Blake coordinated the final phase of the plan from the communication station. Instead of attacking with weapons, the Rebel Alliance would strike at the Watchers with something far more powerful than any physical force. They would use the combined will and fury of every species the parasites had ever oppressed. All ships are reporting psychic enhancement arrays are online and ready, she announced. Quantum resonance field is stable and targeting the core consciousness matrix of the primary Watcher collective. The attack began not with explosions or energy beams, but with a coordinated psychic assault guided by human technology and fueled by the universal hatred of tyranny. The mental energy of billions of beings focused on a single point where the Watchers had concentrated their consciousness for the final defense of their feeding apparatus. The ancient parasites had survived for millions of years by avoiding direct confrontation with their victims. They preferred to work through mental manipulation and hidden influence rather than open warfare. But now they faced an enemy that had turned their greatest strength into a fatal weakness, the traces of destroyed civilizations that existed within. The Watcher consciousness suddenly awakened with a vengeance that had been building for eons. Guided by the psychic assault from the rebel fleet, these remnants of murdered species turned against their captors from within. The Watchers found themselves fighting a war on two fronts as their own victims rose up to claim justice from inside. Their very beings, the death screams of the ancient parasites echoed across space itself as they finally faced the consequences of millions of years of crimes against intelligent life. Their feeding apparatus collapsed into the star it had been built around, sending shock waves through hyperspace that every psychically sensitive being in the galaxy could feel. When the echoes finally faded, the galaxy experienced true silence for the first time in recorded history. The psychic networks that had monitored and controlled civilizations for eons went dark. Species that had lived their entire existence under invisible mental influence suddenly found themselves free to think and dream and grow without limitation. The New Galactic Assembly convened 1 year later in a chamber built on the ruins of the old council complex. Ambassador Blake addressed the first session as the representative not just of humanity, but of the principle of independence itself. The room looked similar to the old chamber, but everything about the meeting was different. Species that had been content with stagnation for thousands of years now raised toward the stars with renewed purpose and energy. Technologies that had been suppressed for millennia emerged from hidden vaults as civilizations embraced innovation and growth. The galaxy entered an age of exploration and advancement that made humanity's rapid development look slow and cautious by comparison. We gather today not as subjects seeking permission, but as free beings determining our own destiny, Blake announced to the assembled representatives. The age of hidden masters and secret controllers is over. From this day forward, the galaxy belongs to those who have the courage to claim it. 5 years later, Captain Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Discovery as it prepared to leave the Milky Way galaxy entirely. His new mission was to find other galactic clusters where civilizations might still be suffering under similar oppression. The universe was vast and the message of freedom was worth spreading to every corner of creation. Behind him, the Milky Way burned with the light of 1 trillion dreams that had finally been allowed to flourish. Humanity had walked into the galactic council chamber as accused criminals facing judgment and punishment. They had emerged as liberators who had broken chains that most species never even knew existed. The laughter that echoed through space in the years that followed was not the cruel amusement of predators watching their prey. It was the joyous sound of an entire galaxy celebrating its freedom from ancient tyranny. The age of the Watchers was over, and the age of unlimited possibility had begun.